There is a version of you that exists right now, not in some distant future, not in some fantasy scenario, but embedded in your nervous system, encoded in your habits, waiting in your unused effort. And the uncomfortable truth is this: most people never meet that version of themselves. Not because they lack intelligence, not because they lack opportunity, but because they systematically waste the very resource that would allow that version to emerge. Focused, deliberate effort over time. Your brain is not designed to automatically make you great. It is designed to conserve energy. It is designed to keep you safe, to repeat what is familiar, to avoid discomfort. And in a modern environment filled with instant rewards, dopamine hits from scrolling, notifications, short bursts of entertainment, your system becomes conditioned to choose ease over growth. Every time you choose distraction over effort, you reinforce a neural pathway that says this is what we do. We avoid challenge. And over time, that becomes your identity. Potential is not a trait. It is not something you either have or don't have. It is a biological process. It is the capacity of your brain and body to change in response to demand. Neuroplasticity, the ability of your nervous system to rewire itself, is always active. But here's the key point. It does not activate in a meaningful way unless there is friction, unless there is struggle, unless there is a deliberate push beyond what is comfortable. So when you avoid difficulty, you are not protecting yourself. You are actively shutting down the mechanisms that would allow you to grow. Think about that carefully. Every time you say, I'll do it later, or I don't feel like it, or I'm just not motivated today, what you are actually doing is training your brain to become less capable. You are reinforcing a loop of inaction. And the longer that loop continues, the harder it becomes to break, because those circuits get stronger with repetition. Now, here's where most people misunderstand motivation. They think motivation comes first and action follows. But biologically, it's the reverse. Action generates motivation. When you begin a task, especially when you don't feel like it, you create a small increase in dopamine, not from reward, but from pursuit. That dopamine signal tells your brain, this matters, keep going. And that signal builds momentum. But if you wait to feel motivated before you act, you will remain stuck because the system that generates motivation is never activated. This is why discipline is not a personality trait. It is a skill. It is the ability to initiate action in the absence of desire. And every time you do that, you strengthen the neural circuits responsible for focus, persistence, and self-control. You are literally reshaping your brain to become someone who follows through. Now consider what happens when you don't do that. When you consistently avoid effort, your baseline for stimulation increases. Simple tasks begin to feel unbearably boring. Your attention span shortens. Your tolerance for discomfort drops. And suddenly even the smallest challenge feels overwhelming. That's not laziness, that's conditioning. And it's reversible. But only if you are willing to do something most people avoid. Sit in discomfort long enough for your system to adapt. When you push yourself into effort, real effort, not half-engaged multitasking, you activate specific networks in the brain associated with focus and executive control. Initially, this feels hard. Your mind wanders. You feel resistance. That's expected. That's the signal that you are entering a zone where change is possible. If you stop at that point, you reinforce the idea that discomfort means retreat. But if you stay just a little longer than you want to, you begin to shift something fundamental. Your brain starts to allocate more resources to the task. The noise quiets. Your attention stabilizes. And over time, that process becomes easier to access. This is how potential is realized, not through bursts of inspiration, but through repeated exposure to controlled difficulty. Now let's address something deeper. Many people are not just avoiding effort, they are avoiding the possibility of failure. Because if you truly try, if you fully commit your energy to something, and it doesn't work, that feels personal. It feels like a reflection of your ability. So instead, people operate at 60%, 70%, just enough to say, I could have done more. That way, failure is never definitive. It's always explainable. But that safety comes at a cost. Because if you never fully apply yourself, you never fully discover what you are capable of. And over time, that uncertainty becomes a quiet form of regret. There is a specific kind of frustration that comes from knowing you are capable of more, but not acting on it. It's not loud. It doesn't always show up as panic or sadness. Sometimes it shows up as restlessness, as distraction, as a constant search for something to fill the gap. That gap is the difference between who you are and who you know you could become. Closing that gap requires honesty, not motivation, not hype, honesty. Are you actually using your time in a way that moves you forward? Or are you numbing yourself with easy inputs that give the illusion of progress without the substance? Are you choosing actions that are aligned with growth, or are you defaulting to what is convenient? Because your brain is always learning from what you do, not what you intend. If you spend hours consuming content but very little time creating, your brain wires itself to be a consumer. If you avoid challenges, your brain wires itself to avoid challenges. If you consistently follow through, even in small ways, your brain wires itself to execute. There is no neutral state. You are always becoming something. So the question is not whether you have potential. The question is, what are your daily actions teaching your brain to become? Now here's a practical shift. Instead of focusing on massive goals, focus on controllable behaviors. Set a standard for effort, not outcome. For example, instead of saying, I need to succeed at this, say, I will give this task my full attention for 60 minutes. That is measurable. That is trainable. And when you complete that, you reinforce a powerful identity, someone who does what they say they will do. That identity is more valuable than any short-term success because it compounds. Another key element is reducing friction. Your environment plays a massive role in your behavior. If distractions are constantly available, your brain will default to them, especially when effort becomes difficult. So you have to design your environment in a way that supports focus. Remove unnecessary inputs. Create clear spaces for work. Make it easier to start the task than to avoid it. This is not about willpower alone. It's about strategy. Because even the most disciplined individuals structure their environment to reduce the need for constant decision-making. Now let's talk about energy. You cannot consistently perform at a high level if your physiology is neglected. Sleep, nutrition, movement. These are not optional. They directly impact your brain's ability to focus, to regulate emotions, to sustain effort. When you are sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and self-control, becomes less active. At the same time, your limbic system, the emotional reactive part, becomes more dominant. So what does that mean in practical terms? It means you are more likely to choose short-term rewards over long-term benefits. You are more likely to procrastinate, more likely to give in to distraction. So if you are serious about not wasting your potential, you have to treat your body as part of the system, not separate from it, because your mind does not operate independently of your biology. Now, there will be days when you don't feel like doing any of this, days when everything feels heavy, when focus is difficult, when progress seems invisible. Those days matter the most because consistency is not built on the days when everything is easy. It is built on the days when it's not. If you can show up on those days, even at a reduced capacity, you maintain the continuity of the behavior. You keep the circuit active, and that continuity is what prevents regression. Missing one day is not the problem. Breaking the pattern is. So your goal is not perfection. Your goal is persistence. And over time, something interesting happens. The things that once felt difficult begin to feel normal. Your baseline shifts, your tolerance for effort increases, your attention stabilizes more quickly, you recover from distractions faster, you become someone who can handle more. That is growth. Not a sudden transformation, but a gradual expansion of capacity. And with that expansion comes a new perspective. You begin to see opportunities where you once saw obstacles. You begin to trust yourself more because you have evidence, repeated evidence, that you can follow through. That trust is powerful. It changes how you approach challenges. It changes how you view setbacks. Instead of seeing them as proof that you are not capable, you see them as part of the process, because they are. Failure in this context is not the opposite of success. It is a component of it. It provides feedback. It highlights what needs adjustment. It forces adaptation, but only if you engage with it. If you avoid it, you avoid the very information that would allow you to improve. So the path forward is not about eliminating discomfort. It is about redefining your relationship with it. Discomfort is not a signal to stop. It is a signal that you are doing something that has the potential to change you. And if you can learn to stay in that space, calmly, deliberately, you unlock something that most people never access. Not because it's hidden, but because it requires effort that most are unwilling to sustain. Your potential is not wasted in a single moment. It is wasted in small decisions, repeated daily. Choosing easy over meaningful, choosing distraction over focus, choosing comfort over growth. And the reverse is also true. Your potential is realized in small decisions, repeated daily. Choosing effort when it's inconvenient, Choosing focus when it's difficult, choosing to act even when you don't feel like it. You don't need a complete overhaul, you need consistent alignment. Right now, there is a gap between what you are doing and what you are capable of doing. That gap will not close on its own. Time does not solve it. Waiting does not solve it. Only action does. And the longer you delay that action, the more those unused circuits weaken, the more that alternative version of you remains dormant. But it's still there. And every time you choose to engage in meaningful effort, you move closer to it. Every time you resist the pull of distraction, you strengthen it. Every time you follow through, even when it's uncomfortable, you build it. You are not stuck. You are trained. And what has been trained can be retrained. But it requires a decision, a real decision, not a temporary burst of emotion, to stop negotiating with your own potential.